The scent of 999 roses still clung to the air. When I called him from the recovery room, my voice was steady, surgical in its precision. As I asked Nathan Carter for a divorce through the phone, I could hear the muffled sobs of his young lover, Madison. "I'm so sorry. It was my idea." She wept. He spent a long moment soothing her before finally answering me. "As you wish," he said, and the line went dead. Weeks later, he stood in our kitchen past midnight. No steam rose from the usual bowl of noodles waiting on the table. He frowned, issuing a few automatic commands about reheating food before disappearing into the shower. When he emerged, wreathed in mist, I was on the sofa, flicking through channels without seeing them. From his suitcase, he produced a handbag, soft pink, the kind a girl half my age would fawn over. "See if you like it," he offered once. His apologies had been grand gestures, spontaneous trips, midnight drives, anything to reignite what we'd lost. Now, all that remained were empty offerings. I didn't even look at it. Changing the channel, I asked when he'd finally make time to sign the papers. Nathan was always occupied, too busy to choose his own anniversary gift, leaving it to some bright-eyed assistant. Yet somehow, it was my calendar that always had to bend around his. "Don't be like this, Madison," he said, pouring himself a small glass of whiskey and sitting down in the single armchair across from me. "Didn't know you hated roses. It won't happen again." His assistant, Chloe James, was his childhood friend and had always been in love with him the moment she graduated from a prestigious university. She rushed to become his personal assistant. They were always side by side, even staying in the same suite during business trips. Honestly, I never blamed Chloe for chasing after Nathan. A fly doesn't land on a seamless egg. If he hadn't given her the opportunity, no other woman could have gotten close to him. I let out an exaggerated yawn and tears pricked the corners of my eyes when I didn't respond for a long time. Nathan thought the matter was over and brought up our son's latest exam rankings. I shook my head. "I don't know. I wasn't trying to hide anything from him." I truly didn't know. The Carter family had always been obsessed with elite education. Our child had been raised at the family estate since birth, with every day packed full of scheduled lessons. It's funny, really. I'm the one who gave birth to him, but the number of times I've actually seen him called be counted on one hand. I've cried, begged, done everything I could, but the Carter family never budged in their eyes. I was lucky just to marry into the family. Everything else was wishful thinking. Nathan pinched the bridge of his nose and said, "You should really focus more on the kid if this keeps up. His grades are going to make him more of an adult than you." I understood what he meant. Yesterday was the only day I was allowed to pick our son up from school. I arrived an hour early and waited until after dark, until the school gates finally closed. That was when Chloe called to inform me that Mrs. Carter had instructed her to bring the child back to the estate for dinner. Through the phone, I could hear Nathan's voice. He was laughing, asking Chloe if she wanted some soup. Snapping back to the present, I gave Nathan a cold smile. "Well, isn't that just what you wanted? I'll step down from this title of Mrs. Carter. Let her have it." I don't know which part of my words struck a nerve, but Nathan froze for several seconds before exploding with anger. "My patience has limits. Madison, stop acting like the world owes you something." He took a couple steps toward me, but I said calmly, "Oh, right. I forgot to tell you I had a miscarriage. It happened a month ago." The night he rushed out to block drinks for Chloe after getting a call from her, I was in unbearable pain, so I drove myself to the That was when I was told I had been over 2 months pregnant. But it was already too late. The baby was gone. The heartbeat had already dissolved. The saddest part, when the doctor told me the baby didn't make it, I felt relieved. I came off the operating table alone, and in that moment, I knew it was time to end all of this. In the living room, Nathan stood with his back to me, gripping his whiskey glass so hard his knuckles turned white. He didn't ask why I hadn't called him. He knew perfectly well how many times I called him that night, but not once did he answer. "Maybe it's better this way. The truth is, I wasn't meant to be a mother." Nathan walked into the study and shut the door behind him with practiced ease. 8 years of marriage, countless fights, shouting matches. I was always the first one to apologize, the first to seek reconciliation, but not this time. This time he never heard me come knocking with my head bowed. Half an hour later, he opened the door, searched the entire house, and couldn't find me anywhere. I was Nathan Carter's first love. No one would have ever imagined that a straight student, a cold and handsome son of a wealthy family, would fall for a cigarette-smoking, club-hopping, non-conforming street girl like me. Our first meeting wasn't exactly romantic. A stinking alley filled with foul air, an honor student cornered by street thugs demanding money. I just happened to pass by one of them, whistled at me with tears and mockery in his tone. I rode straight into the crowd on my bike, beat up the punks, and ended up accidentally rescuing the quiet young man from a life crisis. After that, Nathan stuck to me like glue. He'd wait for me after school, follow me around. I couldn't shake him. He brought me roses. I threw them in the toilet, and flushed them before tossing them back on his desk still dripping. He made me ridiculously expensive lunches with his own hands. I handed them off to the beggar kids on the cornran. They laughed that I had raised a rich, lovesick puppy. Everyone could see we work from the same world, but somehow that guy, when I was beaten so badly by my drunk father, I couldn't make it to school, forced his way into my house, picked up my half-unconscious body and rushed me to the hospital while the doctor stitched me up. Nathan stood with his back to me, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably, wiping at his face over and over. The doctor, exasperated and amused, asked, "You're not the one hurt, so what are you crying for?" He said, "I don't know, my chest just hurts like hell." He even dumbly asked the doctor if maybe he needed to get an ECG in the hospital room. Nathan clumsily peeled apples. "I don't want you to be in this much pain ever again, Madison. Please stop getting hurt, I'm begging you." I ate the popsicle he brought and muttered, "Okay," then glared at him. "Then do you want to be my boyfriend or what?" We both blushed all day. Speechless, I once told Nathan a secret I'd never told anyone. Every time my dad got drunk and beat my mom to the brink of death, there would be a withered rose on the table the next day. It was his pathetic way of apologizing, so I told Nathan if one day he ever wanted to break up with me, he didn't have to say anything, just bring me one idiot. We're going to be together forever, he said. 18-year-old Nathan hugged me tightly, forbidding me from saying another word like that to escape my father. Nathan took me abroad with him for college. His father cut off all financial support to force him to leave me back then. Aside from school, we both worked 2 part-time jobs just to survive. Life was brutally hard and insanely busy, but even while brushing our teeth, we'd goof around and make each other laugh. That tiny apartment saw all our arguments, our reconciliations, our eyes held only each other. If we could have stayed like that forever, how perfect it would have been. "Miss Madison, are you feeling okay?" The doctor's voice pulled me back to the present. It was the 3rd day since I moved out of the villa. My insomnia had gotten worse. While picking up my sleeping pills from the pharmacy, I ran into Chloe. "What a surprise you came to the hospital alone," she said, with a look of innocent surprise, blinking at me. I didn't answer, her face filled with concern. "Nathan told me about the baby. Don't worry, you're both still young. You'll have another chance. You don't have to worry," I said flatly. "There won't be another one." Just as the words left my mouth, I saw Nathan walking up, his face dark as a storm. I didn't know why he was angry, but I could see his hand clenched around the asthma spray bottle he carried. Chloe looked flustered and quickly explained, "Wasn't watching his step coming up the stairs. It's just a slight ankle sprain." Chloe explained softly, "This kind of minor injury really didn't need a hospital visit, but Nathan insisted on bringing me here, and now I've missed work because of it." At that moment, it was my turn at the pharmacy window. As Nathan saw the prescription bag in my hand, he couldn't help but ask, "Are you not feeling well?" I didn't respond. I turned slightly, preparing to leave, but he reached out and snatched the medicine from my hand, opened the bag and looked inside. "Insomnia?" he asked, frowning. "Since when have you had this problem?" "Madison, I'm talking to you. How long are you going to keep playing this game?" Nathan still thought I left home just to get his attention, to make him worry. So even now, he hadn't bothered to ask where I had been staying the past few days or what I had been doing. His voice grew cold and loud, drawing glances from people nearby. I caught a flash of irritation in my chest. I calmly took the medicine back from him and said softly, "I'm not trying to make you worry anymore." Maybe my voice was too gentle, too calm. He must have mistaken it as me giving in. He suggested taking me home first, then heading back to the office with Chloe, but I shook my head. "Work's more important. I can go back on my own." When I said go back, I meant going back to my own home. After my alcoholic father died in a car accident, the compensation money he left behind, along with the broken down house I once couldn't wait to escape, the one where I was always beaten, had now become my only refuge. As I walked away, my figure alone and quiet, Nathan took a step as if to follow, but Chloe quickly grabbed his arm, her face pale. "I don't feel well." All of a sudden, "It might be low blood sugar," she murmured. Nathan hesitated for a second, then turned away from my direction and walked toward the nearest vending machine. The same day my lawyer finalized the divorce agreement, I received a call from Nathan. His voice was urgent and dull. "Our son's sick. Be at the family estate before 6." Before I could even ask what kind of illness it was, he hung up. I printed out the agreement, feeling oddly relieved, but when I arrived at the Carter estate, I discovered the whole family was there. They were in the middle of a typical family dinner. Our son was sitting between Nathan and Chloe. In that moment, to any outsider, they looked exactly like a happy family of 3. With my eyes still red, I walked over to my son, who I hadn't seen in so long, gently touched his face and asked quietly what was wrong. The boy looked like a miniature version of Nathan, same sharp features, same expression, but his eyes filled with disdain as he pushed my hand away and turned to Chloe for help. Eyes weary. The sting in my chest was sharp and deep. Chloe pulled him into her arms, smiling sweetly. "Luke is not sick at all," she said with mock surprise. Madison, did you maybe take the wrong dose of your sleeping pills? Maybe you imagined it. As soon as she said that, the entire Carter family looked at me with thinly veiled contempt. I knew exactly what they were thinking. Just like always, they thought I was pathetic, especially Nathan's sister, Morgan. She'd always looked down on me, thought I wasn't worthy of her brother. She used to roll her eyes and make things hard for me constantly, but for Nathan's sake, I'd always swallowed it. But not this time. I looked straight at Nathan and demanded, you called me and said our son was sick. I dropped everything to come. He ran. Now your girlfriend says he's fine, so which one of you is lying? Or maybe the real illness is with all of you. Nathan hadn't expected me to be this blunt. Chloe's eyes widened in panic. She opened her mouth to explain, but I didn't give her the chance. Lowering my gaze slightly, I said coldly, Chloe, if you want to play the loyal little dog to a married man, that's your business, but don't use my son as a pawn in your little power game. If you do, don't blame me for showing you no mercy. Me. Words were sharp and direct. Chloe's face turned pale and green, and tears instantly welled up in her eyes. She dropped her chopsticks and fled the table. Nathan's expression went cold and unreadable. Nathan's eyes were sharp as blades as he stared me down. Madison, all you ever do is get jealous and compete for attention. The kid's had a cold for days, and you as his mother, have you shown even the slightest concern? And you said 6 o'clock. Really? You made everyone wait for nothing. If you can't respect a basic sense of time, then go eat in the servants' wing with the help. Nathan always had the final word in this house. No one dared to question him. Chloe's eyes lit up with barely disguised glee. She pouted slightly, pretending to be sympathetic, waiting to enjoy the show. Morgan raised her brows at me, her eyes full of open contempt under everyone's judgmental stares. I walked straight to the housekeeper. Mrs. Wu said warmly, come visit me when you have time. I'll cook for you. I didn't want her to misunderstand. Sitting with the rest of them at dinner would have been humiliating. Then I looked Nathan in the eye, gave him a cold, mocking smile and said, you honestly disgust me. Just as I turned to leave, Nathan couldn't hold it in any longer. He stood up and grabbed my wrist, his face twisted with anger. Where do you think you're going? Did I say you could leave? I was stunned by how shameless he could be. What the hell does it matter to you? I snapped. Let me go. I caught a subtle glance from Chloe, and right on. Morgan chimed in with her icy voice, still the same old Madison. All these years and you haven't learned an ounce of manners. Trash will always be trash, never fit to be seen. Before I could say anything, Nathan turned and barked, that's enough. Morgan, shut your mouth. The moment he looked away, I yanked my arm free. Pain flared along my wrist, lighting a fire that had been buried in me for years. I looked around the room, my eyes finally landing on Morgan, her smug face, her superior attitude. Do you want to see what real lack of manners looks like? I asked, stepping toward her before she could react. I grabbed the bowl of creamy soup in front of her, the one I knew was her favorite, and without haste or hesitation dumped it right on her head. The act wasn't even that sudden, but no one expected it. After all, in this household, the soft-spoken daughter-in-law never made trouble, not like this. For a few seconds, the entire Carter estate went eerily silent. Then Morgan let out a piercing scream that shattered the stillness. Only then did the others snap out of their shock, rushing to her side, their voices rising in chaos. A formal family dinner had turned into something more like a street brawl, and yet inside I felt oddly pleased. This was what real life looked like, loud, messy, hot-blooded, a real taste of humanity. But when that heat is all aimed at you, it's hard not to feel a little overwhelmed. After all, I only had one mouth hand. I couldn't possibly shout over all of them, so I focused on the one who looked the most furious, the one clearly ready to lash out. Morgan again raising her hand to slap me. Split second before she could touch me, I reached up, grabbed a fistful of her hair, and shoved half a dry, uncut breadstick straight into her open mouth. Finally, she shut up. I looked over at Nathan and gave a half smile. That's what shut up really means, got it? Carters glared at me, their faces like stone, especially Nathan's grandmother. Her hand slammed down on the table, voice shaking with rage, face twisted with disbelief as she pointed and cursed at me. They still didn't understand what it meant to truly lack manners. I sighed to myself, walked to the edge of the dining table, and with one swift pull ripped the white tablecloth right off. Crash, silverware clattered, dishes smashed, food flew everywhere. Not a single Carter left the scene with their clothes or dignity intact. The thing about people with shoes is they real ways afraid of the ones with nothing to lose. Maybe I looked unhinged, but my eyes were clear, my mind sharper than ever. No one dared to speak, no one dared to come near Mina then, and I locked eyes again. I shrugged with a smile. I wanted to do this from the day I married into your family 8 years. I've really put up with a lot. Good thing, I added, I don't have to anymore. The old woman clutched her chest and shouted at Nathan to divorce me immediately, her voice trembling. Before I could thank her for finally giving me what I wanted, Nathan turned to everyone and said with perfect calm, Madison's mental state hasn't been good lately. Don't take anything she says to heart. Then he looked at me and added coldly, "Clean this place up. This is your last chance." Gasps filled the room. Chloe and the rest of the Carter family stared at him in disbelief. Even I found myself wanting to touch his forehead to check for a fever. Was he seriously out of his mind? Insane. That was the only word that fit. I pulled the divorce agreement out of my bag and without hesitation threw it at Nathan in front of everyone. "Luca, Mommy will come visit you when she has time," I said gently, and with that, I walked out of the Carter estate without the slightest trace of regret. Just as I was about to start the car, I caught a glimpse of Nathan in the rearview mirror chasing after me. Chloe followed close behind. Nathan's hand was injured, cut by the shattered glass and ceramic from earlier, but he didn't even seem to feel it. He kept banging on the car window, ignoring Chloe's teary pleas for him to get his wounds treated. "Talk to her," she cried. "Please just talk to her." But Nathan had no idea I would completely ignore his existence. I pressed the gas and drove off without looking back. That night, my phone wouldn't stop ringing even though I'd turned the sound off. The screen kept lighting up over and over. Eventually, I couldn't stand it anymore and removed the SIM card. When he couldn't reach me by phone, Nathan started messaging me on WeChat. He asked me when I started planning the divorce. Was it because of the 999 roses? He reminded me that he had already apologized for that. He didn't understand why I wouldn't let it go. He said I couldn't just throw away 8 years of hard-earned love over someone else's mistake. He said our son was still Yungan, that I couldn't be so heartless as to take away his chance at a complete family. I thought for a moment, then replied with one line, "You need to calm down." It was the same line Nathan had always used on me whenever I broke down in the past. I knew better than anyone just how powerful those 4 words were. Sure enough, after that, he went completely silent for the next week. Nathan didn't try to contact me again, but I knew he'd secretly driven out to the neighborhood where I was staying. I'd been watering flowers on the rooftop when I saw his familiar license plate from a distance. I stretched lazily, gave it a glance and went back inside without a second thought. Even though we weren't officially divorced yet, I had already started my new life. I picked up a temporary job at a convenience store near the park. After being a housewife for so long, I'd almost forgotten how to interact with people normally. Thankfully, most of the customers were kind and patient. There was a college student who often came by with his golden retriever. Sometimes he'd ask me to keep an eye on his dog while he ran errands. Over time, we got to know each other. I found out he actually lived in the same neighborhood, a sort of half-neighbor. Sometimes in the evening, I'd run into him walking his dog downstairs. We'd chat for a bit, and then share food with me when he'd cooked too much. We became easy, friendly acquaintances. Near the weekend, I finally got a WeChat message from Nathan. He asked me to come by the company to finalize the divorce papers. Nathan never liked me visiting his office in the past. I always figured it was because he didn't want his plain, casually dressed wife to be seen in public with him. When I received the message, I had just gotten off my shift at the store. I put on some light makeup and headed to his office. When I arrived, Nathan was on a call. He glanced at me several times and gestured for me to sit and wait. I noticed Chloe wasn't there today, so I gave up on the idea of grabbing a coffee and pulled out my phone to play a quick game. By the time I'd used up all my lives, I suddenly realized Nathan was standing behind me watching me play. "Sign it," he said, pulling his gaze away and tossing the divorce agreement onto the coffee table. I didn't sign it immediately like he wanted. Instead, I read over every clause carefully. It was more generous than I'd expected, but after reading so many legal tips from divorce lawyers online recently, I wasn't going to be fooled easily. I asked Nathan to transfer the overseas properties he'd bought in the past 2 years to me. In return, I wouldn't ask for his shares in the company. He froze for a moment, then quickly contacted his legal counsel and had them bring over a revised agreement. Just as I was about to sign it, Nathan reached out and blocked the signature line with his hand. "Look carefully," he said, his expression dark. "Custody goes to me if you sign this. From now on, you'll have absolutely nothing to do with our son." Of course, I knew that, and I also knew that even though the law granted me visitation rights as long as the Carter family refused to cooperate, I might never get to see my son again. Saying I wasn't heartbroken would be a lie, but no matter how much it hurt, this divorce had to happen. My son would be staying with Nathan. At least he'll never suffer. Not with the kind of life he'll have. I found him a rich dad. He's already won at the starting line. Nathan clearly hadn't expected I could still joke at a time like this. His expression darkened into a cold sneer. "I have things to do. We're done here today." And with that, he ripped up the divorce agreement right in front of me. I stood there in silence for a moment, then let out a sarcastic laugh. "Whatever, I'll file for divorce myself. I am done with this." "Stop," I said. "Stop." Nathan had never lost his composure like this before. He followed me out, ignoring the nervous glances from his staff who were too afraid to meet his eyes, trailing me all the way to the elevator. "You're seeing someone, aren't you? You're wearing lipstick because you're about to meet him, right?" His voice was tense. "Otherwise, How could you be this heartless, just walk away from your own son, as... The elevator doors opened, Chloe stepped out. She wasn't supposed to be working today, she'd taken leave, but apparently one of her co-workers tipped her off that I was coming. Chloe was from a respectable family, and always scared about appearances. She gently tried to calm Nathan down, speaking in a soft voice, let her go, but Nathan shoved her hand away harshly. This is between me and my wife, it's none of your damn business. Chloe's face turned ghost white. She could see the growing stares from around the office. Before I came here, everyone pretty much believed she and Nathan were a couple, and now after that public outburst, she could only imagine how fast the rumors would spread. Tears spilling from her eyes, Chloe turned and ran down the stairs. I glanced at Nathan with a faint smile. Aren't you gonna chase after her? The truth was, I'd never really hated Chloe. The one who betrayed what we had was never her. It was always Nathan. Recently, I'd reconnected with some old friends, Bailey, Wong, Quinn, and me. We used to be known as the Cat-Eye Trio. They were the ones who stood by me through toxic family chaos and life's darkest moments. They'd always known where I lived and how to reach me, but over time, we all followed the unspoken rule of adulthood, not to intrude unless invited. When we met again, I vented to them about everything Nathan had done, his cheating, his lies. A few drinks in, they swore they'd burn the entire Carter estate down for me. We laughed until we cried, holding each other, sobbing through the pain. Little by little, my insomnia faded, but just as I started getting used to a peaceful life, barely a month in, Nathan showed up again, uninvited, standing at my door. He waited there from 3 in the afternoon until 1 in the morning. My neighbors were so alarmed by the situation they almost called the police. Left with no other choice, I finally let him in. He looked thinner, his whole presence drained of the steady confidence he used to wear like armor. His eyes no longer held that self-assured calm. Mrs. Wu had told me that after I moved out, Nathan started spending a lot more time at the family estate. At first, his grandmother was thrilled. She cooked extravagant feasts every day for her son and grandson, even invited Chloe to move in so she could openly play matchmaker. But things didn't go as planned. Nathan grew pickier with food, his appetite shrinking each day. That might have been manageable, but then his mood began to unravel. One day, he locked himself in the storage room for hours, obsessively searching for something from his high school days. When he couldn't find it, he exploded in fury at the housekeeper responsible for storing gold belongings a few days ago. He went further, publicly throwing Chloe out of his bedroom in front of the staff. They had a huge fight. She sobbed uncontrollably, lost her footing and tumbled down the stairs. Her ankle was shattered, nearly disfigured. Then Nathan's grandmother had a heart attack that same night after he blamed her for interfering in his marriage. Both Chloe and the old woman were rushed to the hospital and were still recovering. As for Nathan, seeing him now so haggard and broken, I could tell he hadn't slept well in a long time. He looked just like I did after we lost our child. As soon as he opened his mouth, the first words he said were, "I'm sorry." He told me he'd been doing a lot of thinking, and that he finally understood why I had asked for a divorce. 8 years of a marriage where I never had a voice, where I backed down again and again until there was nothing left of me. Then said, "I know you've completely lost faith in me." I shook my head. Losing faith? That was 2 years ago. The divorce, this is a decision I made after thinking it through for a long time. Disappointment isn't the problem, I said quietly. The real problem is despair, when your heart stops reacting entirely, and the worst part is what comes after despair, when you finally let go. We were still husband and wife, at least for now. So after a pause, I said, "Nathan, I've already started trying to live a new life. You should do the same. Pick yourself back up, move forward." Nathan looked around my small living room, then gave me a bitter smile. "Do you remember how I came to this place years ago to take you away? Even after 8 years, I still dream about the way you were back then." "Madison, I admit I neglected you," he said, "but I never cheated. You're the only woman I've ever had in my life." I looked him straight in the eye. "What exactly do you consider cheating? You were lying next to me, but at a single phone call from another woman, you'd rush out the door." You basked in the admiration from her eyes, but when you got home, you expected me to have a hot meal ready at all times. "You know very well," I said calmly, "that's not love, and it's certainly not fair. I know exactly what love is supposed to feel like." Nathan's eyes turned red. Something I said had hit him hard. "No, I know this is all my fault. Just give me another chance, please, Madison. I can't accept this. I am begging you." He looked at me, eyes filled with desperation. "Do you remember what you said at my father's funeral? You said you'd stay with me forever, that we'd grow old together, die on the same day, and be buried side by side. You swore you'd never leave me. Have you forgotten everything but those romantic vows? Those heartfelt promises, weren't they all sincere when we said them?" The mistake was never the moment. The mistake was believing people don't change, but people do. And because he changed, I had no choice but to change, too. Just then, the doorbell rang. He stood and opened the door. It was my young male neighbor. He glanced inside, saw Nathan sitting in my home and asked with subtle intent, "Do you need any help?" Before I could answer, Nathan stormed past me and punched him clearly. Nathan had seen me talking with this neighbor before, no wonder he'd accused me of meeting someone new. Without a word, the two men started throwing punches. Fists flew. It was wild and senseless. I stood off to the side trying to break it up, but they wouldn't stop. Finally, I snapped, "If you want to fight, take it outside. Whatever happens, it's none of my business. If either of you gets hurt, don't come crying to me." Bang! I slammed the door shut behind them. I don't know how that fight ended. I only know one thing. Nathan didn't show up at my door again after that. About 2 months later, Nathan's grandmother, recently discharged from the hospital, reached out to me personally, completely out of character. She said Nathan missed me. She asked when I might stop by to visit that day. I rode up to the school on my brand new Harley wearing full leather riding gear. I don't think that Schoolgate had ever seen a cooler single mom than me. Kids are easy to win over. Really, anything new, exciting or cool is enough to capture their adoration. I took Luca tote the kind of fast food he'd been dying to try but was never allowed by the Carter family. After the meal, he looked up at me with big eyes and asked, "Can you pick me up again next week?" I chuckled, helped him put on his helmet and took him back to the old family estate. I hadn't planned on going inside, but Nathan's grandmother stopped me at the gate with Mrs. Wu beside her. Her days was complicated, equal parts regret and hope. She invited me in for tea. Luca also tugged my hand and asked me to go upstairs and play with him for a while. I'd never seen his room before. That alone was enough to weaken my resolve. I followed him upstairs. On the 3rd floor, I accidentally saw Nathan through a slightly ajar door in his study, attending a video conference from home. I froze. I didn't know how long I stood there until Luca gently tugged at my sleeve and I followed him into his room. I sat there with him, half distracted, trying to stay present. Eventually, I looked at the time and said, "Mommy has to go now. If I'm free next week, I'll come find you again." Luca looked up at me. "Can I come with you?" Then he added, "Can Daddy come, too?" Blood really is thicker than water. I didn't know whether those words came from Nathan's family or were truly from my son's heart, that I could feel his sincerity. "If there's a chance, of course you can come," I said gently, "but only you. Were not inviting Daddy even when talking to a child." I refused to lie. I didn't want to give him hope only to let him down later. As I stepped out of the room, I saw Nathan already waiting for me a short distance away. He gave me a small smile. "Are you hungry?" I had just eaten barely 2 hours earlier, but when I saw the fine lines around his eyes, I hesitated, then nodded. "Starving. What are you going to cook?" "Yeah," he said, "I'll make you something." That night, Nathan took longer than ever to make a simple pot of porridge. I wasn't sure if the heat was too high or if he just left it too long, but soon the smell of burning filled the kitchen. Nathan didn't seem to notice. He finally lifted the pot, didn't even turn off the stove, and brought the whole thing out to the living room, setting it directly in front of me. Ladled a big, full bowl for me. We were sitting so close, I could see the bottom of the pot was already scorched, but I didn't say a word. I picked up the spoon and started eating what would probably be the last meal he ever made for me. "Is it good?" he asked eagerly, watching me with anxious eyes, desperate for approval. When I gave a small nod, he didn't quite believe me. He grabbed a spoon and took a bite directly from my bowl. The taste was unbearably bitter. No seasoning, just burnt rice and overcooked blandness, worse than anything I could describe. "How is that possible?" I heard him mutter. "I swear," I added. "Sugar, don't eat it," he said quickly. "I'll make a new onis." He spoke. He tried to take the bowl from my hands, but he forgot the porridge was still piping hot. His reflexes kicked in too late. The moment he grabbed the bowl, the scalding heat burned through his skin. He dropped it instinctively, spilling the contents all over the table. I frowned. "Nathan, stop. I'm full." "No," he said firmly. "It's not right. Let me try again." As he spoke, he was already reaching barehanded to clean up the mess. I watched speechless as his hands turned red, swelling almost immediately. Soon his skin began to blister and peel from the burns. I said coldly, "Don't bother trying to look pitiful. I don't feel sorry for you at all." And I wasn't lying in that moment. Watching him, his hair now more than half white, face worn down by sleepless nights, I felt nothing but a twisted sense of satisfaction. What goes around comes around. He deserved this, every bit of it. Nathan stared at me for a long time, stunned. He still couldn't understand how some people can truly stop loving and mean it. After I left that night, Nathan sat alone in the kitchen and cried until morning. Not long after, he fell ill. It started as acute pneumonia and he looked terrifyingly gaunt. Even after he recovered and was discharged, he couldn't sleep through the night. Eventually, he had to rely on medication just to get a few hours of rest. His grandmother, once so proud, eventually lowered herself and begged me to visit him more often. I ignored her completely. The Carters called me heartless and cold-blooded. They told Luca not to see me anymore, that I was no longer a mother worth knowing. But they forgot, 1. Children aren't lifeless dolls. Right and wrong, he could judge for himself most of the time. Nathan turned a blind eye when I snuck Luke away, letting him enjoy the kind of childhood joy he should have always had. 1 month passed, then 3, then 6. And finally Nathan understood there was truly no future left for us, but even then, he chose Denny Allen, the private world he built in his. Mindy was still in that tiny overseas apartment waiting for him to take his pills and fall asleep so we could go back to living that dream life together, only in sleep in the end. I had no choice but to file for divorce. The first time I filed, the case was dismissed. The second time, citing our long-term separation and the irreparable breakdown of our marriage, the court approved it. Our divorce was finale. As getting divorced made me in every sense a wealthy single woman. I didn't buy a new house. Instead, I had the old one fully renovated, turned it into a place that felt more comfortable, more like me. The college student who walked his golden retriever once confessed his feelings to me after I turned him down. He lost his composure and never came around again. It's not that I swore off love forever. In fact, after becoming single again, I stopped rejecting quality men just because they showed interest, but I no longer made love the centerpiece of my life, my own joy, how I felt day to day. That became my first priority. At the airport, waiting in the departure lounge, I sat with my 2 best girlfriends. Between us was a long selfie stick. We kept changing angles, snapping hundreds of photos in one go while criticizing each other's photography skills. We instinctively opened our favorite editing apps and started sorting through the shots. Laughter filled the air. Right then a handsome and elegant man happened to pass by. All 3 of us straightened our backs immediately, sitting up with a sudden show of poise, but the illusion didn't last a full minute. Hey, are you too hungry? There's free instant noodles over there, one of us said. The 3 of us looked at each other, instantly in sync. We began playing rock, paper, scissors. Whoever lost had to go fetch the noodles through the semi-transparent glass walls. The reflections of 3 women laughing together shimmered gently, and outside the tall airport windows with the endless blue sky behind it, freedom was slowly lifting off.